it, he said, adding that he'd like to know the rationale behind MSNBC suppressing and ignoring me and my campaign for months.
Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is in the hospital tonight. We've learned she was admitted late Friday to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, and we just have a few details about her condition. A statement from the court only says that Justice Ginsburg experienced chills and a fever, and she was transferred to Johns Hopkins from a hospital in Washington. Let's get right out to our Supreme Court reporter, Ariane DeBogue. Ariane, Justice Ginsburg is 86 years old. She missed oral arguments 10 days ago because she was sick. What are you hearing about her condition, and how concerned are people close to her?
Right, a four-time cancer survivor. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as you said, yesterday afternoon, she started feeling chills and a fever. She went on her own to the local hospital, but once she got there, the doctors thought that she should be transported to Baltimore, about an hour and a half away, because that's where her physicians are, who have treated her in the past. She got there, they treated her for what they think is an infection, and they gave her antibiotics, and then they say in this court statement that her symptoms abated, and they say that maybe even she could be released as soon as tomorrow, but that's not clear. Worth noting, Anna, she was at court yesterday, and she participated in a closed-door conference with the justices, and that was an important...
New York Times fashion expert has a sick comparison for past and present women candidates. I'm Josh Bernstein, filling in for Gary Franchi in the Next News Network. Now, before I get to the story, folks, remember Next News is being heavily censored. For the maverick Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard has reached a new low. Here's a woman that has no problem speaking her mind, and of course the left-wing mob absolutely hates that. Well, guess what? It has now made its way to the desk of the New York Slime's fashion critic, believe it or not. Vanessa Friedman is no fan of Gabbard's white pantsuits, which is to say that she deems that the Congresswoman's clothing choice the stuff of, quote, cult leaders. Wow. In her take, accompanied by the less than subtle headline, Tulsi Gabbard's white pantsuit isn't winning, Friedman said Gabbard's outfit, worn during Wednesday's Democratic presidential debate, is meant to tap into the image of the mythical white knight riding in to save us all from yet another regime change war. What's more, she said Gabbard's white clothing is the white of avenging angels and flaming swords of someone combative and righteous as a cult leader, and pushes connotations of the fringe rather than the center. Well, let's break that one down. I think she's actually going towards the center rather than the fringe, Miss Friedman, okay? It's the rest of the freaks on that stage that are on the fringe. Tulsi Gabbard, at least, is in the center. Although, let's not be mistaken here. She's still also a big-time liberal, folks. It indeed would seem that Vanessa isn't exactly besties with Tulsi, which brings us to Friedman's reaction to Hillary Clinton wearing a white pantsuit when she accepted the Democratic Party's nomination for president in 2016. Two words: loved it. Friedman opened her piece by asking, did she
It's a guy who loves Backstreet Boys, and he does the entire workout.
You will never catch me on a Peloton. But we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
You'll have a chance to send us some song pics. We were talking about this yesterday. Want to do it today? Friends at FoxNews.com. What do you want to hear? Later in the show?
Yeah, are you sick of our picks? Are you sick of the 50s and pop music?
Come on,
The 80s and 90s for me.
In the meantime.
We're glad you're here. In the meantime, a lot of news, and this caught our eye because we've been covering it on the program. If you remember, about just over a week ago, the president announced on a Friday evening that he was pardoning Matt Goldstein and Clinton Lawrence. And he was also restoring the rank of Eddie Gallagher, Navy SEAL accused and ultimately acquitted of so-called war crimes. Ultimately, he was found guilty of taking pictures with a dead ISIS fighter who they had killed. Now, he issued that order. The Navy took it, you might say, tepidly out the gate, and his lawyer came out and talked about how the Navy...
Disciplinary plans against Eddie Gallagher. And what's even more remarkable is, first of all, it appears to be a bit of defiance by Navy officials, including the Secretary of the Navy, Mr. Spencer, Richard Spencer, defying the Commander-in-Chief. And there are reports as well, Rachel, that he has threatened to resign over this.
Right, and how unusual is this, that to see someone at this level, Pete?
Well, it is very unusual, and usually what happens is if you disagree with the Commander-in-Chief over a substantive issue of policy, then resigning is the way that someone might handle it. But there are conflicting reports. As Ed mentioned, Richard Spencer, he's the Navy Secretary. The Navy SEALs work for him. He was in Nova Scotia at a policy conference and responded to reports that he wanted to resign. Here's what he had to say.
Contrary to popular belief, I'm still here. I did not threaten to resign. But let us just say that we're here to talk about external threats, and Eddie Gallagher is not one of them.
Is the board going to go ahead on December 2nd? If you were to receive the order, what would the response be?
If the president requests to stop the process stops. Good order and discipline is also obeying orders from the president of the United States.
Sir, has the president explained to you his rationale behind restoring Chief Gallagher's rank?
No.
Maintaining his pin?
No, he doesn't have to. I do not interpret what the president does. I do what he says.
And then he doubled down on Twitter.
Yes. He tweeted this. He said, "I'd like to further state that in no way, shape, or form did I ever threaten to resign. That has been incorrectly reported in the press. I serve at the pleasure of the president." I spoke to a senior administration official last night, confirmed that indeed he said, "I do not want to resign." But you look at this from the beginning. The president's tweet was clear. Don't take away this guy's trident. The Navy said, and it's Admiral Green, who's the head of the Navy SEALs, said, we're still going forward with this board process to strip him and other SEALs of their trident. And it looks like, because it is, retribution for the fact the president weighed in. Listen, the president, as the commander-in-chief, has the prerogative to take a different view of warfighters. Hey, I don't like the rules of engagement. I want to untie the hands of guys, and I'm going to view the process differently. And I like what Richard Spencer said in one process. He